The year is 1986. In southwestern China, workers digging clay for a brick factory strike something hard beneath the soil. What they pull from the earth are bronze faces, dozens of them. Faces with enormous eyes that do not look like any people who ever lived. They were deliberately broken, burned, and buried more than 3,000 years ago by a civilization that left no name and no writing. Tonight, we trace the complete story of the gods of China, 85 divine beings, from the egg of chaos to the Monkey King. And at the end, we return to those buried faces and ask who they were watching. Welcome to Splinters of Time. Before we begin, a small request. Most of the people watching this channel have not subscribed yet. If you enjoy these journeys into the deep past, subscribing and liking this video means more than you know. It helps these documentaries reach others who are searching for the same answers. It takes only a moment, and it keeps this work alive. Thank you for being here with us. Chinese mythology was written down across thousands of years by many different hands. Names, family lines, and even the order of events can change from one ancient text to another. Where the sources disagree, we will follow the most widely accepted versions, and we will tell you when the old books tell different stories. And when we cross from mythology into archaeology, into real objects you can visit in a museum today, we will make that line clear. Now let us go back. Back before the first emperor. Back before the first written word. Back to the very beginning of everything.
The year is 1986. We are in the green heart of southwestern China. Workers at a small brick factory are digging for clay near a quiet village called Guanghan. Their shovels strike something hard beneath the soil. What they pull from the earth will haunt archaeologists for decades. Bronze faces, dozens of them. Faces with sharp, angular features. Faces with enormous eyes that seem to stare straight through time. Some of the eyes bulge outward on long stalks, as if reaching for the sky. These faces do not look like any people who ever lived in China. Some say they do not look like any people who ever lived on Earth. The pits held thousands of treasures, masks of solid gold. A bronze tree taller than 2 men, with birds perched on its branches. Elephant tusks stacked in careful rows. And all of it had been deliberately broken, burned, and buried more than 3,000 years ago. Here is the question that keeps scholars awake at night. The civilization that made these wonders left no writing. No names, no history. The ancient records of China, some of the most detailed records ever kept by any culture, do not mention them at all. It was as if someone had tried to erase them. To understand who these faces were made for, we must go back. Back before the first emperor. Back before the first written word. Back to the very beginning of everything. This is the complete story of the gods of China. All of them. From the egg of chaos to the Monkey King. 85 gods, immortals, and divine beings. And at the end of this journey, we will return to those buried bronze faces and ask the question no one has been able to answer. Who were they watching? In the beginning, there was no sky. There was no earth. There was no light and no darkness, because there was nothing to divide one thing from another. There was only Hundun, the formless chaos. Ancient texts describe it as a swirling mist without faces, without direction, without time. Some stories give the chaos a body, a strange faceless being with no eyes, no ears, no mouth. A being that could not see the world, because the world did not yet exist. Within this chaos, something began to form. An egg, vast beyond all measure. And inside that egg, the first being slowly took shape. His name was Pangu. For 18,000 years, Pangu slept inside the egg, growing in the darkness. And then, one moment, he opened his eyes. He saw nothing but black, and he refused to accept it. Pangu stretched his enormous body and the egg cracked apart. The light parts rose and became the sky. The heavy parts sank and became the earth, but Pangu feared they would collapse back into one another. So he stood between them, his feet on the earth and his hands against the heavens. And he pushed. Every day the sky rose higher. Every day the earth grew thicker. And every day Pangu grew taller to hold them apart. For another 18,000 years he stood there, alone, holding up the sky. He was the first pillar of the world, and when the heavens were finally fixed in place, Pangu lay down and died. But his death was not an ending. It was the greatest act of creation the world has ever known. His breath became the wind and the clouds. His voice became the thunder. His left eye rose as the sun. His right eye rose as the moon. His blood flowed as the rivers. His flesh became the soil of the fields. His bones turned to stone and mountain. His hair became the stars of the night sky and the forests of the land. The world itself, in Chinese myth, is the body of a sleeping giant. Every mountain you climb is his bone. Every river you cross is his blood. And some of the oldest versions of the story add one final unsettling detail. The fleas and parasites that lived on the body of Pangu, touched by the wind, transformed. They became human beings. But there is another story, an older story, and in this one, humanity was not an accident. We were made by hand. Her name was Ne Zha. The texts describe her as a goddess with the face and torso of a woman, and the long, winding body of a serpent. She wandered the newly created world, through its mountains and rivers, and she found it beautiful. But she also found it silent, empty. There was no one to share it with. So Ne Zha knelt by the banks of a river. She reached into the wet earth and took a handful of yellow clay. With her own fingers, she shaped a small figure. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head filled with thought. When she set it on the ground, the little figure came alive, and it danced, and it called her mother. Ne Zha was overjoyed. She shaped more figures, one by one, each crafted with care. But the world was vast, and her hands were slow. So she took a rope, dipped it deep into the mud, and swung it across the land. Every drop of mud that fell became a human being. And the old texts whisper a hard truth. The figures shaped carefully by her hands became the noble and the fortunate. The drops scattered from the rope became the common people. Even in the moment of creation, the myth says, the world was not equal. Pause on this image for a moment. A divine being with the body of a serpent, kneeling in the mud, shaping humanity from clay. Thousands of kilometers to the west, in ancient Sumer, the gods also shaped mankind from clay. In Egypt, the god Khnum formed people on a potter's wheel of earth. In the Hebrew scriptures, the first man is molded from the dust of the ground. Different lands, different languages, civilizations that supposedly never met. And yet the same story, again and again. Humanity, shaped from clay, by beings who came before us. Coincidence? Perhaps, but it will not be the last one we find tonight. Beside Ne Zha stands her brother, and in many traditions, her husband. His name is Fuxi. He too is drawn with the body of a serpent, and ancient paintings show the two of them with their tails wound tightly around each other, spiraling upward like a double helix. If Ne Zha gave humanity life, Fuxi gave humanity civilization. The myths say he watched the spider and taught people to weave nets and fish. He taught them to hunt, to cook, to keep records with knotted cords. And he gave them his greatest gift, the 8 trigrams, a system of broken and unbroken lines that captured the hidden patterns of the universe. From those lines would one day grow the Book of Changes, one of the oldest books on Earth. A serpent-bodied teacher descending among early humans, handing them the tools of knowledge. Remember this figure. Cultures across the entire ancient world remember someone just like him. For a time, the world of gods and humans knew peace. Then came the war that nearly ended everything. Zhurong was the god of fire, a proud warrior who rode 2 dragons across the burning sky. He ruled the southern heavens, and his pride burned as hot as his flames. Fire and water could not share the heavens. Gonggong was the god of water, a being of rage with the body of a serpent and a crown of red hair. His rivalry with the fire god exploded into open war. The battle shook the world, and Gonggong lost. But in his fury, the water god refused to accept defeat. He hurled himself at Mount Buzhou, the great mountain in the northwest that served as a pillar holding up the sky. The mountain cracked, the pillar snapped, and the sky fell. A hole tore open in the heavens. Fires raged across the land that no rain could quench. Floods rose from below that no shore could hold. Beasts emerged from the broken wilderness and preyed on humankind. The texts describe it simply. The sky did not cover the earth completely. The world was ending. It was Nuwa who saved it. The mother of humanity gathered stones of 5 colors from the beds of the great rivers: red, yellow, blue, white, and black. She melted them in a divine fire, and with the molten stone she patched the hole in the sky, sealing the heavens with her own hands. But the broken pillar could not be restored. So Nuwa found the great cosmic turtle named Ao, a creature as old as the world itself. She cut off its 4 legs, and she set them at the 4 corners of the earth to hold up the sky forever. She slew the black dragon that was drowning the lands. She burned vast fields of reeds and used the ashes to dam the floodwaters. And slowly the world grew quiet again. Yet the repair was not perfect. The sky now tilts toward the northwest. And this, the ancient Chinese said, is why the sun, the moon, and the stars all slide toward the west as they cross the heavens. The earth, in turn, tilts toward the southeast, and that is why every great river of China flows east toward the rising sun. Look up at the night sky tonight and watch the stars drift westward. According to the oldest stories of China, you are watching the scar of a war between gods. Humanity had been created, destroyed, and saved. Now it needed to be ruled, and the beings who came to rule it would not call themselves gods. They would call themselves emperors. After the great repair of heaven, humanity was alive, but it was helpless. People ate raw flesh and shivered in the dark. Then came Suiren. The legends say he watched a bird pecking at the branch of an ancient tree and saw sparks leap from the wood. He took a branch, drilled it against another, and pulled fire out of the world itself. With that single act, the long night of mankind ended. The next teacher was Shennong, the divine farmer, a god often drawn with the horns of an ox. He gave humanity the plow, the harvest, and the first markets. But his greatest gift was also his curse. The old texts say the walls of his stomach were transparent, like crystal. So Shennong tasted plants, hundreds of them, one by one, and watched through his own body how each one healed or poisoned him. Every cure he found, he gave to mankind. He is the father of all medicine, and the legends say he died as he lived. One day, he tasted a small yellow flower that tore his intestines apart, faster than any remedy could reach. The god of healing was killed by the very world he was trying to understand. Shennong had a young daughter who loved the ocean. One day she sailed out to watch the sunrise, and the eastern sea swallowed her. But her spirit refused to die. She transformed into a small bird with a striped head called Jingwei, and the Shanhaijing, the ancient classic of mountains and seas, says she does one thing forever. She carries twigs and pebbles from the mountains and drops them into the sea, trying to fill the ocean that killed her. One stone at a time, for eternity. And now we arrive at the most important figure in all of Chinese tradition, Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor. Even today, more than 1 billion people call themselves the descendants of Yan and Huang. Yan is Shennong, Huang is him. The texts describe a ruler unlike anything before. Under his reign came carts and boats, the calendar, music, mathematics, and the foundations of Chinese medicine, preserved in a book that physicians still study today, the Inner Canon of the Yellow Emperor. The records claim he reigned for 100 years. They claim 4 faces watched the 4 directions of his empire. They claim dragons answered his call. Pause on that. A ruler who arrives with impossible knowledge, lives beyond a human lifespan, and commands the sky. We heard the same pattern in Sumer, where the king list records rulers who sat on thrones for thousands of years. 2 civilizations, far apart, both remembering an age when their kings were something more than human. But the Yellow Emperor's throne was not given. It was won in the first great war of the world. Beside the Yellow Emperor stood his wife, Ne Zha. One afternoon, as she drank tea beneath a mulberry tree, a small white cocoon dropped into her hot cup. As she lifted it out, it unraveled into a single shimmering thread, longer than she could believe. Ne Zha had discovered silk. For thousands of years afterward, the secret she found in a teacup would be guarded by China like a weapon, and would name the greatest trade route on earth. The Yellow Emperor's court historian was a being named chang'e, and the old portraits give him 4 eyes, burning with double sight. Chang'e studied the tracks of birds in the sand, the patterns of turtle shells, the shapes of mountains and stars, and from them he created the first Chinese characters. Writing itself. The texts record what happened on the day writing was born, and it is not a celebration. The heavens rained grain, as if in mourning, and the ghosts wept through the night. Because once human deeds could be written down, the texts explain nothing could ever be forgotten again, not even by the dead. We said the Yellow Emperor's throne was won in the first great war of the world. This was his enemy, Qiyu. The descriptions in the old texts read like something from a nightmare or from a forge: a head of bronze, a forehead of iron, the body of a beast, with 6 arms in some accounts and horns that could shatter shields. The texts say that he ate sand and stones, and he did not come alone. 81 brothers marched behind him, each one a monster like himself, and they were the first beings on earth to forge metal weapons. The 2 armies met at a place called Zhuolu, and the battle that followed was not fought with spears alone. Qiyu summoned the Lord of Wind and the Master of Rain, and drowned the battlefield in storms. Then he breathed out a fog so thick that the Yellow Emperor's soldiers could not see their own hands. For 3 days the army wandered blind inside the mist. Huangdi answered with inventions. His engineers built the south-pointing chariot, a machine with an iron figure whose arm always faced south, no matter how the chariot turned. The first compass in human memory. His army marched out of the fog, and his own daughter, a spirit of burning drought named Ba, descended onto the field and boiled the storms away. Qiyu was captured and executed. The legends say his blood soaked the earth, and that a lake of salt water stands at that place to this day. Yet his terror never died. For centuries, Chinese generals offered sacrifices to Qiyu before battle, praying to the god of war. And the Miao people of southern China still honor him, not as a monster, but as their first ancestor. The Yellow Emperor ruled for a century, and then the records say he did not die. The historian Sima Qian, the most respected chronicler of ancient China, wrote down what tradition remembered. A dragon descended from the sky at Mount Qiao, with whiskers of gold and a body that shimmered like metal. The Yellow Emperor climbed onto its back, along with more than 70 of his ministers. The dragon rose, and they were gone. The people who remained behind buried only his clothes. A ruler who brings impossible knowledge, and at the end of his reign is carried into the sky by a shining object. Write that sentence down. We will need it again at the end of this journey. Not everyone bowed to heaven's new order. A giant named Xingtian challenged the supreme god for the throne of the world. He lost, and his head was cut off and buried inside a mountain. It did not stop him. The Shanhaijing describes what happened next. The headless body rose. His nipples became his eyes. His navel became his mouth. And gripping his axe and shield, he continued to dance his war dance, headless, undefeated, forever. For more than 2,000 years, Xingtian has been China's symbol of a spirit that refuses to surrender. Another giant looked at the sky and made an impossible promise. His name was Kua Fu, and he decided to catch the sun. He ran across the world as the sun crossed the heavens. The heat consumed him with thirst, so he drank the yellow river dry and then the river Wei. It was not enough. Kua Fu fell and died just short of the sunset. But where his wooden staff landed, a vast forest of peach trees bloomed, feeding travelers for all time. The grandson of the Yellow Emperor took the throne next. His name was Zhuanshu, and he did something that should stop you cold. The oldest texts say that in the earliest days, heaven and earth were connected. Gods walked among humans. Humans could climb to the sky. The two worlds spoke freely. Zhuanshu ended it. He ordered two of his officials, Chong and Li, to cut the connection between heaven and earth. Forever. The gods withdrew to the sky. Humanity was left alone below. Chinese scholars call it the severance, and it raises a question the texts never answer. What happened in that age of contact that made separation necessary? After Zhuanshu came Diku, a quiet ruler remembered as the great-grandfather of dynasties. Then came Yao, the king so virtuous that he refused to give the throne to his own unworthy son, and searched the land for a better man. It was under the reign of Yao, remember this, that the sky itself would break again. We will return to that morning shortly. The man Yao found was Shun, a poor farmer whose family had tried to murder him, and who repaid them with forgiveness. The texts add one strange detail. Each of Shun's eyes held two pupils. He saw the world twice. In the days of Yao and Shun, a great flood swallowed the world. Sound familiar? A god named Gun was ordered to stop it. In desperation, he stole a treasure from heaven itself, the Shirang, a magical soil that grew endlessly and could build dams that rose with the water. But stolen miracles carry a price. The supreme god discovered the theft, and Gun was executed on Feather Mountain. His body lay there for 3 years without decaying, and when a blade finally cut it open, something emerged, alive, his son. His name was Yu, and where his father had tried to block the waters, Yu understood a deeper truth. You do not fight a flood, you guide it. For 13 years, Yu worked without rest. He dredged channels, split mountains, and carved riverbeds to lead the waters to the sea. A winged dragon named Yinglong crawled before him, drawing the paths of future rivers with its tail. The legends say Yu passed the door of his own house 3 times during those years, heard his wife and his newborn son inside, and 3 times refused to enter because the work was not finished. His body broke. The texts describe his hands worn smooth of fingerprints, his legs crippled, his walk reduced to a shuffle that priests in China would imitate for thousands of years as a sacred dance, the step of Yu. When the waters finally retreated, the people gave him the throne. You divided the land into 9 provinces and cast 9 enormous bronze cauldrons, one for each, as the symbol of the right to rule. And he founded the Xia, remembered as the first dynasty of China. Here the myth touches the edge of history. For centuries, scholars dismissed the Xia as pure legend. Then archaeologists began uncovering Bronze Age cities in the very heartland the texts describe. The debate is still burning today, but before the flood, the old books record an even stranger catastrophe. A morning when China woke up, looked at the sky, and saw 10 suns rising together. That story is next. Before the Jade Emperor, before the celestial court you will meet shortly, the oldest layer of Chinese myth speaks of another ruler of the sky. His name was Dijun. Here is the strange part. He was once supreme, the father of suns and moons. And then, somewhere across the centuries, China simply forgot him. Later texts barely mention his name. A king of heaven, erased by time. Remember that gods, too, can be buried. Dijun's wife was Shihei, the mother of the suns. And there was not one sun, there were 10. The Shanhaijing describes their home in the Far East, beyond the sea, where a colossal tree called Fusang rose from a valley of boiling water. Each night, Shihei bathed her 10 children in the valley, and they climbed into the branches of the great tree, glowing like golden birds. 9 rested on the lower branches, 1 waited at the top, and each morning 1 sun, only 1, rode across the sky. Hold that image in your mind, a sacred tree crowned with sunbirds. Because in the buried pits of Sanxingdui, archaeologists pulled out a bronze tree, 4 meters tall, with birds perched upon its branches. We will count those birds together at the end of this journey. For ages, the 10 suns kept their discipline. 1 sun, 1 day. And then came the morning, in the reign of King Yao, when the rules broke. Perhaps it was boredom, perhaps rebellion. The texts do not say. But on that morning, all 10 suns rose into the sky together. The world began to die. Rivers boiled away. Crops turned to ash. Stones grew soft with heat. Monsters crawled out of the burning wilderness to feed on the desperate. Humanity, so recently saved from the flood of broken heaven, now faced death by fire. Dijun heard the prayers rising from the smoke, and he sent down the greatest archer who ever lived, Hu Yi. In his hands, a red bow and a quiver of white arrows, Hu Yi looked at the sky and understood that mercy would not work. He drew his bow. The first arrow flew and a sun burst apart, falling to the earth as a dead, 3-legged crow of gold. He fired again and again. 9 times he fired, and 9 suns fell from the heavens. He spared the last one. The sun you see in the sky today, the legends say, is the survivor, the only one of 10 brothers. And it has never once dared to misbehave again. But Hu Yi's arrows had killed the children of a god. Dijun's gratitude turned to grief, and the great archer was stripped of his divinity and banished to the earth, together with his wife. Her name was Chang'e. Hu Yi could accept a mortal life, but he could not accept watching his wife die. So he traveled west to the mountain of Kunlun and begged the Queen Mother of the West for the elixir of immortality. She gave him enough for 2 with a warning. Shared, it would grant eternal life on earth. Taken by one alone, it would tear that person from the ground and carry them into the sky. What happened next depends on which ancient book you trust. Some say Chang'e drank it all in a moment of weakness, hungry for heaven. Others tell a kinder story, that a thief came to steal the elixir while Hu Yi was away, and Chang'e swallowed it to keep it from evil hands. Either way, her feet left the earth. She rose past the clouds, past the wind, and came to rest on the moon, alone in a cold and silent palace. She is still there, in the stories, and in a way, she is still there in reality. When China began sending spacecraft to the moon, the nation named the entire program Chang'e. The goddess finally received her visitors. Chang'e is not entirely alone up there. A man named Wu Gang shares her exile, sentenced to the moon for abandoning his duties in the pursuit of easy immortality. His punishment is elegant and endless. He must cut down the great cassia tree that grows on the moon. But with every swing of his axe, the wound in the trunk heals instantly. He has been chopping, the legends say, for thousands of years. And there is one more figure on the moon. Look up on a clear night at the dark patterns on its face, and you may see it. A rabbit, standing upright, pounding something in a mortar. The Chinese call it the Jade Rabbit, the loyal companion of Chang'e, eternally grinding the elixir of immortality with its pestle. And here is the detail that should make you pause. On the other side of the Pacific Ocean, the Aztecs looked at the very same moon, and they also saw a rabbit. Two civilizations, separated by an ocean, staring at the same shadows, telling the same story. The moon, it seems, keeps no secrets from anyone, or the same secret from everyone. The Queen Mother of the West. To understand who she is, we must climb to the very top of the Chinese heavens, higher than the emperors, higher than the gods of sun and storm, to the three beings that Taoism places above everything that exists. They are called the Three Pure Ones, and they are not gods in the ordinary sense. They are the Tao itself, the silent force behind reality, taking three faces so that the universe can be seen at all. The first is the celestial worthy of the primordial beginning, who existed before time, and who breathed the universe into being. The second is the celestial worthy of the numinous treasure, the keeper of sacred knowledge, who separates order from chaos. And the third walked the earth as a man, the celestial worthy of the way and its virtue, who, the tradition says, descended among humans as Laozi, the old master who wrote the Tao Te Ching and vanished into the West. The Three Pure Ones do not govern, they simply are. The actual ruler of heaven, the one who signs the decrees, sits one level below them. He is the Jade Emperor, and his story is unlike any supreme god on earth because he was not born to the throne. He earned it. The legends describe a being who cultivated virtue through millions of lifetimes, passing trial after trial across entire ages of the universe until no one in existence was more worthy. And the heaven he rules looks like nothing else in world mythology. It is a government, a celestial empire with ministries and departments, a ministry of thunder, a ministry of plagues, a ministry of wealth, millions of divine officials keeping records on every single human life. Every god has a rank. Every god files reports. Gods who fail are demoted, fined, or exiled to the mortal world. The ancient Chinese looked at the sky and saw what they knew best. An empire, a perfect mirror of their own, with the Jade Emperor seated at the center of it, reading the paperwork of the universe. Hold on to that thought. Heaven, organized like a state. We will meet its officials soon. And now the goddess who gave Huyi the elixir, Zhi Wangmu, the Queen Mother of the West. Late paintings show her as a serene and beautiful queen. But the oldest description, written in the Shanhaijing more than 2,000 years ago, shows something else entirely. A being on a mountain at the edge of the world, with the teeth of a tiger, the tail of a leopard, and wild, unbound hair, whose whistle pierced the sky. The goddess of immortality began as something humans feared. Her home is Kunlun, the cosmic mountain of the far west, The texts describe it as a tiered paradise rising toward heaven, surrounded by water that drowns even a feather, guarded by beasts of flame. There, in her garden, grow the peaches of immortality, ripening once every 3,000 years. When they ripen, every god in existence travels to Kunlun for her banquet. And here is where the story grows strange. An ancient chronicle called The Travels of King Mu describes how a real, historical king of the Zhou dynasty journeyed far into the west, nearly 3,000 years ago, and met the Queen Mother by the Jade Lake. They exchanged gifts and poems. She invited him to return. A human king, recorded traveling to meet an immortal being at a mountain in the west. File that report away. Kunlun is not finished with us. Balance demands an opposite. If a queen mother rules the west, a king father must rule the east. His name is Dongwang-gong, lord of the rising sun and the immortal men. And yet, like Dijun before him, he is a fading god. The queen mother's fame swallowed his own, and over the centuries his temples emptied, his stories thinned. Today, even in China, few remember the king who balanced the universe. Above the palaces of east and west, at the still point of the turning sky, stands Dumu, the mother of the Great Dipper. She is drawn with many arms and an eye for every direction, a goddess of pure starlight. The 7 stars of the Big Dipper are her sons, along with the great purple star of the celestial pole. And her office is a sobering one. In the records of heaven, Dumu and her star sons oversee the ledger of human lifespans. The length of your life, the tradition says, is written in her stars. The north gate of heaven is guarded by its greatest warrior, Zhenwu, the perfected warrior, the dark lord of the north. He began as a mortal prince who abandoned his throne to seek perfection on the mountain of Wudang. The legends say that to purify himself completely, he cast away his stomach and intestines. But flesh born of a prince does not disappear quietly. His discarded organs transformed into 2 fearsome beings, a great turtle and a giant serpent, that spread darkness and disorder across the world until Zhenwu himself returned to subdue them. They kneel beneath his feet in every statue, his own sins, conquered and enslaved. Centuries later, a Ming dynasty emperor would credit Zhenwu for his throne and build him a city of temples on Wudang that still stands today. We promised you the officials of heaven. Let us meet them. In an empire ruled by paperwork, no power mattered more than the written word. So heaven has a minister for it. Wenchang Wang, the god of literature and examinations, keeper of a ledger that records the destiny of every scholar. For more than 1,000 years, the imperial exams decided who in China would rise and who would remain in the dust. And the night before the exams, the temples of Wenchang overflowed. They still do every year before university entrance exams. Beside the elegant Wenchang stands his shadow, Kuiqing, the crooked star of the first place. The legends say he was once the most brilliant scholar in the empire. He won the highest score in the land, but when he came before the emperor, his face was so deformed that the throne refused him. In despair, he threw himself into the sea. A giant turtle rose from the depths, caught him, and carried him to the stars. Now he stands on that turtle in the night sky, holding the brush that marks the name of every top scorer in the world. In the east rises Mount Tai, the holiest mountain of China, and on its summit lives Bixia Yuanjun, the lady of the azure clouds, goddess of the dawn and of childbirth. For centuries, grandmothers have climbed thousands of stone steps to her temple at the peak, praying for grandchildren on the way up and giving thanks on the way down. She stands at the gate where new souls enter the world, but her mountain has another gate. Because Mount Tai is not only where life begins, In the oldest beliefs of China, it is where life returns. The great emperor of the eastern peak, Dongyue Dadi, rules the mountain from a palace deep within the stone. His ministry holds the master registry of every living being. The day of your birth is recorded there. And so, the tradition says, is the day of your death. When that day arrives, your name is passed down from the mountain to a darker office far below, and 2 gentlemen are dispatched to find you. They always come as a pair, one robed in white, tall and pale, with a long red tongue and a smile that never moves, his hat bearing the words, "You have come too." One robed in black, short and scowling, dragging iron chains. They are Heibai Wuchang, the black and white impermanents. The escorts of the dead. The tradition says that in the moment of death, they are simply there, standing at the edge of the room. No door opens. No one else sees them. The white one bows politely, and the soul, whether it wishes to or not, rises and follows them out of the world. The road of the dead ends at a gate, and the gate has 2 keepers. Nyutu, with the head of an ox and the body of a giant. Mamian, with the face of a horse and a trident in his fists. They were the first beings a dead soul would see at the entrance of Diyu, the underworld. Not to punish, simply to make one thing clear: there is no way back. Beyond the gate, the soul enters a courtroom, and on the bench sits Yanluo Wang, the king of hell. Do not imagine a devil, imagine a magistrate. Yanluo wears the robes and cap of a Chinese judge, and before him lies the file of your entire life, every deed, every word, recorded by the bureaucracy of heaven. Beside the bench stands a mirror, the mirror of retribution, in which the soul is forced to watch its own worst moments replayed. Chinese hell is not one pit. It is a system. 10 courts, each with its own king, each handling a different category of sin with cold precision. The punishments are terrible, but they are not eternal. Diyu is not damnation. It is a sentence, and every sentence, one day, ends. When the sentence is served, the soul climbs out of the dark toward the bridge of helplessness, the crossing point into the next life. And on that bridge waits an old woman with a kind face and a ladle in her hand. Her name is Meng Po, and she offers every single soul a bowl of soup, the soup of oblivion. One sip and everything dissolves. Your name, your family, every face you ever loved, every wound you ever carried. The soul crosses the bridge empty and is born again as someone new, remembering nothing. No soul may refuse the bowl. And yet, the old stories whisper of rare ones who somehow crossed without drinking. Children who speak of past lives they could not possibly know. The tradition has an explanation ready. They missed their soup. But the system has leaks. Some ghosts escape the courts, slip past the bridge, and return to trouble the living. For them, heaven employs a hunter. His name is Zhong Kui. In life, he was a scholar of immense talent and striking ugliness. He won the top score in the imperial exam, and just like Kuixing, the emperor took one look at his face and cast him out. Zhong Kui died in disgrace on the palace steps, but the underworld saw what the emperor could not. The courts of hell gave him a sword, an office, and an army of tamed demons. Now he hunts the ghosts that no one else can catch. Centuries of Chinese families have hung his powerful portrait on their doors, the boldest face in heaven, guarding them through the night. Leave the courts of the dead and look up at the storm. The sky of China has its own officials. The first is Lei Gong, the Duke of Thunder. He is one of the strangest figures in the Pantheon. A god with the wings and beak of a bird, blue-skinned, carrying a hammer and a ring of drums. Every clap of thunder is Lei Gong striking his drums. But he is not a mere weather spirit. He is an executioner. The Ministry of Thunder punishes the crimes that human courts can never see. Secret murders, poisoned wells, children who betray their parents. When a person is struck by lightning, the old belief whispers, "Heaven knew something about them that you did not." But thunder is blind, and once, the stories say, that blindness turned to tragedy. A young woman was throwing rice husks into the river when Lei Gong, mistaking it for the wasting of grain, struck her dead. An innocent, executed by heaven. To make amends, the Jade Emperor raised her from death and made her a goddess, Dianmu, the mother of lightning. Now she flies ahead of the thunder, holding 2 mirrors, and flashes light onto the earth below, so that Lei Gong can see the truth before he strikes. That is why, to this day, the lightning always comes before the thunder. 2 more officials ride the storm, and you have already met them on a battlefield. Feng Bo, the Earl of Wind, an old man who carries the winds of the world inside a goatskin bag. And Yu Shi, the Master of Rain, who pours the storms from a bronze vessel. These are the 2 powers that fought beside Qiyu at Zhuolu, drowning the Yellow Emperor's army in tempests. After the war, heaven did not destroy them. It hired them. The rebels of Zhuolu became civil servants of the sky, delivering wind and rain on schedule forever. And now, the most powerful creatures of the natural world. In the deepest waters of the 4 directions stand 4 crystal palaces, and in them rule 4 brothers, the Dragon Kings. Ao Guang, king of the Eastern Sea, the eldest and the mightiest. Ao Qin in the south, Ao Run in the west, Ao Shun in the north. Each commands an army out of a fever dream, shrimp soldiers in armor of shell, crab generals, patrols of fish and turtles drifting through palace gates of coral and pearl. Understand that in China, the dragon is not the monster of European legend. No knight rides out to slay it. The dragon is power, wisdom, and life-giving water. It is the emblem emperors stitched onto their own robes. And yet even dragons answer to the bureaucracy. The Dragon Kings control all rain, but they may not release a single drop without a decree from the Jade Emperor. When the paperwork of heaven runs slow, the earth cracks with drought, and for thousands of years, Chinese villages built temples to the Dragon Kings and prayed for the decree to come faster. Remember the name Ao Guang, the king of the Eastern Sea. A child is coming for him. Not every water god was loved. He Bo, the Earl of the Yellow River, was feared. The river he ruled is the mother of Chinese civilization, and also its sorrow, a torrent that has drowned millions across history. And the old chronicles record something chilling. For generations, villages along the river practiced the marriage of Heibo. Each year, a young girl was chosen, dressed as a bride, laid upon a floating bed, and given to the river. It took a human official to end it. The chronicles tell of a magistrate named Ximen Bao who arrived at the river, questioned the ceremony, and threw its corrupt priests into the water instead to deliver the message personally. The weddings stopped. We end this chapter with the youngest great deity of China. And her story begins not in myth, but in history. Around the year 960, on a small island called Ne Zha off the southern coast, a girl was born named Lin Monyang. The accounts say she did not cry for the first month of her life. She grew into a young woman of strange gifts, reading weather that had not yet arrived, guiding boats through dark water. One legend defines her. While she sat weaving at home, her spirit left her body and flew into a storm at sea where her father and brothers were drowning. She seized her brothers in her hands and her father in her teeth. Then her mother, finding her body in a trance, shook her awake. Her mouth opened to answer. And far away in the storm, her father slipped beneath the waves. She died young, and the sailors who loved her refused to let her go. They began to pray to her. The prayers worked, they said. Within a few centuries, emperors granted her titles until a fisherman's daughter held the rank of Empress of Heaven. Today, Mazu has thousands of temples and hundreds of millions of devotees across the Chinese world. Remember what you have seen in this chapter, because it is the secret engine of the entire Pantheon. In China, heaven hires. A girl from a fishing village can become a goddess. Gods here can be born. So far, we have climbed mountains and crossed the seas of the dead. But for the ordinary people of China, the most important god of all lived somewhere else entirely. He lived in the kitchen. His name is Zhao Jun, the stove god. A small paper portrait of him hung above the family hearth, watching. And he was not merely watching, he was taking notes. Because Zhao Jun is an official of heaven, stationed inside your home. And once every year, in the final week of the lunar calendar, he ascends to the celestial court and files a report on your family. Every kindness, every lie, every word spoken in anger over dinner. The Jade Emperor reads that report and sets your family's fortune for the year accordingly. So the Chinese developed a beautifully human solution. Before sending him off, families smear the lips of his paper portrait with honey and sticky malt candy. Some say it sweetens his words. Others admit the truth. It glues his mouth shut. Outside the house, at the edge of the village, in a shrine no larger than a doghouse, lives the humblest official of the Celestial Empire, Tudi Gong, the Lord of the Soil. He holds the lowest rank in all of heaven, a white-bearded old grandfather responsible for one neighborhood, one field, one street corner. And yet, no god in China receives more daily visits. Farmers told him about the harvest. Families reported births and deaths at his shrine so that he could pass the news up the chain. The paperwork of heaven begins at a shoebox by the side of the road. Above the village, God stands his superior, the Chenghuang, the god of walls and moats. Every city in China had one, ruling the spiritual life of the city from a temple at its heart. And here, the system reveals its strangest habit. The Chenghuang was usually not an ancient spirit at all. He was a deceased human official, a real magistrate or general whose record in life had been so honorable that, after death, heaven appointed him to govern the city's ghosts. In imperial times, newly arrived human magistrates would spend their first night in his temple, formally reporting for duty to their dead colleague. If one god could be called the most popular in China today, it is him, Kaishen, the god of wealth. His most famous form is Zhao Gongming, a dark-faced warrior riding a black tiger, carrying an iron whip and a bowl that turns whatever it touches to gold. Once a fearsome spirit of plagues, the centuries reshaped him into the master of fortune, commanding a ministry of wealth with gods of honest profit and windfall luck serving under him. On the 5th day of every lunar new year, hundreds of millions of windows open before dawn, and firecrackers split the dark to welcome Kaishen into the house first, before he visits the neighbors. Walk into any traditional Chinese home or restaurant, and you will likely meet 3 smiling old men standing side by side. They are not decorations, they are stars. Fu Xing, the star of happiness, holding a child or a scroll. The planet Jupiter given a human face. Lu Xing, the star of status, dressed as an imperial official, granting careers and rank. And Shou Xing, the star of longevity, the most recognizable of the 3, an old man with an impossibly tall, bald forehead, leaning on a knotted staff, holding the peach of immortality, plucked, the legends say, from the garden of the Queen Mother herself. Happiness, position, long life, the complete wish list of humanity, standing on a shelf. One god holds a power that even emperors feared. Yue Lao, the old man under the moon, the god of marriage. He carries a book listing every destined couple on earth and a bag of red thread. With it, he ties an invisible cord between the ankles of two newborns, and no distance, no war, no hatred can keep them from one day meeting. A Tang dynasty story proves the point. A young man named Wei Gu met the old god by moonlight and demanded to know his future wife. Yue Lao pointed at a poor market vendor's infant daughter. Furious at the insult, Wei Gu sent a servant to stab the child. 14 years later, Wei Gu married a beautiful young woman of high family who always wore an ornament between her brows. When he finally asked why, she removed it, revealing a scar. "A knife," she said, "in the market, when she was a baby. You cannot cut the red thread." Our tour of the household ends where every house begins, at the door, and the two armored giants glaring from millions of Chinese doorways were once real men. The story goes back to a Tang dynasty emperor, Taizong, one of the most powerful rulers in Chinese history. The chronicles of legend say a vengeful ghost began visiting his bedchamber at night, shrieking and hurling bricks, until the most powerful man on earth could not sleep. Two of his greatest generals, Qin Shubao and Yu Qigong, volunteered to stand guard at his door in full armor. The hauntings stopped instantly, but the emperor could not keep two living generals standing at his door forever. So he ordered their portraits painted, life-sized and terrible, and pasted onto the palace doors. It worked. And it still works, the tradition says. Their faces have guarded the doors of China for 13 centuries. Mazu showed us that heaven hires, but Taoism makes a stranger promise still. It claims there is a path through discipline, alchemy, and secret breath by which an ordinary human can simply refuse to die. And as proof, China offers its most beloved band of gods. 8 figures, painted on dishes, carved on temple beams, known to every child. The 8 immortals. Each of them was once a person, and each found the door out of death in a different way. Their unofficial leader is Li Tieguai, Iron Crutch Li, and his story explains his name. He was a master so advanced that his spirit could leave his body and travel to celestial realms. Before one such journey, he told his student to guard his empty body for 7 days and burn it only if he failed to return. On the 6th day, the student, called away to his dying mother, panicked and burned the body early. Li's spirit returned to find nothing but ash. The only vessel left was the corpse of a lame beggar who had just died of hunger in the road. He entered it, and so the most powerful spirit among the immortals walks forever in the body of a limping beggar, leaning on an iron crutch, carrying a gourd of medicine that can pull the dying back from the edge. Beside him stands Zhongli Quan, once a proud general of the Han dynasty whose army was destroyed, and who fled into the mountains a broken man. There he found masters who taught him a deeper kind of power. His feather fan, the legends say, can revive the dead. Then comes the most famous of the 8, Lu Dongbin, the scholar with the demon-slaying sword. His awakening came through a dream. Dozing at an inn while his millet cooked, he lived an entire lifetime, 18 years of triumph, family, disgrace, and ruin. He woke to find the millet still simmering. If a whole life can pass inside one pot of grain, he asked, what is a life? He left for the mountains that day. Then Zhang Guolao, the white-bearded eccentric who rides his donkey sitting backwards, facing the road already traveled. When he stops, he folds the donkey like a sheet of paper and tucks it into his pouch. Then Chao Guojiu, uncle to an emperor, who fled the palace in shame over his family's crimes, still holding the jade court tablet that once granted him an audience with the throne. Then Han Jiangzi, the young flute player, whose music makes flowers burst open out of season. Then Lan Kaihe, the strangest of them, neither clearly man nor woman, drifting through the streets in a ragged blue robe and one shoe, singing songs no one taught them, until one day, drunk outside a tavern, they rose into the sky on a crane. And finally, He Xianggu, the only woman among the 8 who as a girl dreamed of a spirit instructing her to eat powdered mother of pearl, and who slowly grew so light that the mountains could not hold her down. She carries a single lotus flower. One image binds them together. The day the 8 stood at the shore of the eastern sea, needing to cross. Riding clouds, said Lu Dongbin, would be too easy. So each immortal threw their own treasure onto the waves, the crutch, the fan, the sword, the flute, the lotus, and sailed across the ocean standing on the proof of their own journey. The Chinese still use the proverb today. The 8 immortals cross the sea, each revealing their own power. There is no single road, it means. Everyone crosses on what they have become. We told you a child was coming for the Dragon King. Here he is. His mother carried him for 3.5 years. And when she finally gave birth, it was not to a baby, but to a glowing ball of flesh. Her husband, the garrison commander Li Jing, was certain it was a demon and split it open with his sword. Inside stood a boy, already walking, already laughing. His name was Ne Zha. At 7 years old, Ne Zha went to bathe in the sea, and his divine power shook the crystal palace of Aoguang, the dragon king of the east. The king sent an officer to kill the disturbance. Ne Zha killed the officer. The king sent his own son, the dragon prince Ao Bing. Ne Zha killed him too and pulled the tendon from his spine. Now heaven itself turned against the child. The 4 dragon kings rose from the 4 seas and demanded a life for a life, or they would drown the city and take his parents instead. What Ne Zha did next is one of the most shocking scenes in all of mythology. The 7-year-old stepped forward, took up a sword, and declared that he would return to his parents exactly what they had given him. He separated his flesh from his bones and offered it back to his mother and father. The debt was paid with himself, but his teacher, a great immortal, gathered lotus roots and lotus petals and built the boy a new body out of the flower itself. Ne Zha rose again, reborn, untouchable, standing on 2 wheels of fire that carry him across the sky. And if his name sounds familiar, it should. In our own decade, an animated film about this boy became the highest-grossing animated movie ever made, anywhere on Earth. 3,000 years later, the Lotus Child is still unstoppable. And what of his father, the man who first raised a sword over his own newborn? Li Jing became one of heaven's supreme marshals, but he carries a strange burden. In his palm rests a miniature golden pagoda given to him by the immortals, and its true purpose is unsettling. The pagoda exists to contain his own son. It is the one object in the universe Ne Zha cannot fight. A father and son serving in the same celestial army, bound together by a weapon built for a war between themselves. Heaven, it seems, understands families very well. The mightiest warrior in the celestial army is the Jade Emperor's own nephew, Erlang Shen. You will know him instantly in any painting. In the center of his forehead, standing upright between his brows, is a third eye. An eye that sees through every illusion, every disguise, every lie in creation. His story begins with defiance. His mother, a goddess, was imprisoned under a mountain for loving a mortal man. Erlang grew up, took up his 3-pointed lance, and split the mountain open to free her. He serves heaven, but on his own terms, listening to its commands, the texts say, but not always obeying them. At his side runs a lean black hound, the howling celestial dog. Remember them both, the eye that cannot be deceived and the dog that never misses, because in a moment they will be needed against something heaven cannot control. Now, meet the strangest figure in this entire chapter. Not because of his power, because of his job, Zha was an old man who fished a river with a straight hook held above the water. When asked how he expected to catch anything, he answered that the fish that wanted him would come. What came instead was a king who recognized the old man's wisdom and made him the architect of a revolution that toppled a corrupt dynasty. That much stands at the edge of real history. But the great novel called The Investiture of the Gods adds the cosmic ending. After the war, heaven handed Zha the list of the fallen and the authority to appoint them, hero and enemy alike, to the vacant offices of the celestial bureaucracy. Read that again. The gods of China were assigned their posts by a human resources officer, and he was mortal. With Buddhism, new beings entered China from the West, and one of them would become the most beloved figure in all of Asia, Guanyin, the goddess of mercy. Her full name means the one who perceives the sounds of the world, because that is her vow. Any voice, anywhere, crying out in genuine suffering she hears, and she holds a secret. Guanyin began in India as a male being, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. As the centuries carried him east into China, he softened, changed, and became her. Compassion, the Chinese decided, wore a mother's face. One image of her stands above all others, the Guanyin of 1,000 arms, with an eye set in every palm. The legend says she once tried to help every suffering soul on earth at the same moment, and her 2 arms shattered from the strain. So the Buddha granted her 1,000. You have seen him in restaurants and gardens across the world, the fat, bald, laughing monk, and almost everyone calls him by the wrong name. He is not the Buddha. He is Budai, a wandering Chinese monk from roughly 1,000 years ago, who carried a cloth sack, gave candy to children, and laughed at things no one else could see. Only after his death did the whispers begin, claiming the strange beggar had been Maitreya, the Buddha of the future age, walking among us in disguise, checking on humanity ahead of schedule. Enter any large Buddhist temple in China, and 4 colossal armored figures will be glaring down at you before you reach the main hall. The 4 heavenly kings, guardians of the 4 directions of the universe. The king of the north holds an umbrella that can plunge the world into darkness when opened. The king of the south holds a sword whose swing raises black wind. The king of the east holds a lute whose music makes armies collapse. And the king of the west holds a serpent and an eye that watches everything below. They stand at the gate for one reason. What is sacred must be guarded. Always. And now, the final name on our list of 85, the most famous of them all. At the top of a mountain by the eastern sea sat a stone that had absorbed the essence of heaven and earth since the beginning of time. One day, the stone cracked open like an egg, and out leapt a monkey with eyes of fire. Sun Wukong feared nothing. He learned the secrets of immortality from a hidden master, seized a magic iron pillar from the palace of the Dragon King, a staff that obeyed his voice, shrinking to a needle behind his ear or growing to touch the sky. And when the bureaucracy of death came for him, he did what no soul had ever done. He marched into the underworld, found the ledger of lifespans, and scratched out his own name. Heaven tried to manage him. They gave him a meaningless title, and when he discovered the insult, he ate every immortality peach in the garden of the Queen Mother, wrecked her banquet, and declared war on the celestial order itself. 100,000 divine soldiers could not stop him. Even Erlang Shen, the all-seeing eye, fought him to a standstill. Thrown into the furnace of Laozi to be melted down, he emerged after 49 days unharmed, with eyes that could now see through any deception. It took the Buddha himself to end it, trapping the Monkey King beneath a mountain for 500 years, until he accepted a chance at redemption, guarding a gentle monk on the long road west. That road became the Journey to the West, one of the great novels of human history. and 5 centuries of stories have not contained him. From anime to blockbuster video games, the rebellious stone monkey remains, even now, the single most adapted character Asia has ever produced. 85 gods, from an egg of chaos to an egg of stone. 85 gods. We have walked from the egg of chaos to the egg of stone, and now, as promised, we return to where we began. To a clay pit in Guanghan in the year 1986, to the bronze faces staring up out of the earth. Here is what archaeology can tell us, with confidence. The site is called Sanxingdui. It was a walled city, vast for its age, the heart of a civilization that flourished more than 3,000 years ago. Scholars connect it to the legendary kingdom of Shu, a name that appears only in scattered lines of later Chinese records. In 1986, 2 sacrificial pits were uncovered. Between 2020 and 2022, 6 more. From them came more than 17,000 artifacts, bronze masks the size of a man, masks layered in gold, a standing bronze figure taller than any human, with enormous hands curled around something long, vanished, hundreds of elephant tusks, silk. And the bronze work itself is so advanced that it forced historians to rewrite the story of early China, which was never supposed to have a second center of civilization, here, so far from the Yellow River. And every one of those treasures had been deliberately broken, burned, and buried with care, in layers, like a funeral for the gods. Now, we told you that we would count the birds. In one of the pits stood the shattered pieces of a bronze tree. Reassembled, it rises nearly 4 meters, a trunk wrapped by a descending dragon, branches hung with fruit and flowers. And perched on those branches, cast in bronze 3,000 years ago, sit birds. 9 birds. Think back to the oldest myth of the sun. A colossal tree in the east called Fusang. 10 sunbirds living in its branches. 9 resting below, while one, the 10th, flies across the sky. Mainstream scholars themselves point to this connection. And the top of the bronze tree is broken, its highest point lost. Many researchers believe a 10th bird once stood there. Or perhaps, as the myth would have it, the 10th was never on the tree at all. Because the 10th sun is the one that is away, crossing the heavens. A myth written down centuries later in the heartland of China. And here it stands, in bronze, made by a people the records forgot, who supposedly lived outside that world entirely. Then there are the faces, the enormous masks with eyes pushed outward on stalks, straining from their sockets toward the sky. The later chronicles of Shu preserve a fragment that may explain them. The first king of Shu, they say, was named Kangkong, and his eyes protruded from his face. His people, the texts add, made images in his honor. That is the careful explanation. A dynasty of kings remembered for impossible eyes, honored in bronze. But notice what the explanation quietly accepts, that this civilization poured its finest metal for centuries into faces that do not look human. Eyes built to see further than eyes can see. Hands shaped to hold something that was taken away before the burial. Scholars suggest the figure held an elephant tusk or a jade scepter. The truth is simple. We do not know, and we do not know the answer to the largest question of all. Why was it buried? The leading theories are honest guesses. A catastrophe, a flood, or an earthquake, read as the anger of heaven. A violent change of rulers, with the old gods executed like a defeated dynasty. Or a deliberate ritual ending, a civilization formally closing its own religion, retiring its gods, and laying them in the ground. Whatever the reason, the people of Sanxingdui did not melt their treasures down, though the bronze was wealth itself. They killed their gods properly and gave them a grave. Now, hold the whole picture in your mind, everything this journey has shown you. The oldest records of China describe an age when heaven and earth were connected. when gods walked among humans, until the Emperor Zhuanshu ordered the link severed. Forever. They describe the Yellow Emperor, a ruler of impossible knowledge, carried into the sky by a shining dragon, leaving only his clothes behind. They describe a real king, Mu of Zhou, traveling far into the western mountains and meeting an immortal being by a lake. They describe sunbirds on a cosmic tree. And here, in the pits of Guanghan, a forgotten people built that tree in bronze, surrounded it with masks whose eyes strain upward, and then, one day, buried it all and walked out of history without leaving so much as a name. Mainstream archaeology says these were ancestor kings and shamanic rituals, the sacred theater of an isolated Bronze Age culture. And it may be entirely right, but standing in front of those faces, one question refuses to leave. Their eyes are not looking at us. They were never looking at us. Who were they watching? The bronze does not answer. The pits at Sanxingdui are still being excavated as you watch this. Somewhere under that quiet farmland, more of the story is waiting, and it may yet change everything we said tonight. The gods of China have been created from chaos, born from stone, hired from fishing villages, promoted, demoted, forgotten, and buried. Dijun was once the king of heaven, and time erased him. Mazu was once a girl on an island, and time crowned her. Perhaps that is the final secret of this pantheon. Gods, like civilizations, like all of us, are splinters of time. Some are remembered. Some are waiting in the ground, with their eyes turned toward the sky. If this journey through the gods of China was worth your time, there is one small thing you can do for us. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Every like tells the algorithm that this story mattered. And if something in tonight's video stayed with you, drop it in the comments. We read everyone. If you have already subscribed, thank you for standing with us. Thank you for watching and for walking through 3,000 years with us tonight. Until the next video, take good care of yourselves. We will see you in the next Splinter of Time.